In the 21.11 release of SAP S/4HANA Cloud, a couple of additional self-service configuration UIs were released in your configuration environment to allow you to configure the propagation of texts from your sales order or purchase order all the way through to your freight orders via the freight units. You might be asking, well, why would I need or want to leverage these SSCUIs? Well, the value proposition that comes from these two SSCUIs is that they are going to allow for to fluidify the communication between your sales and transportation operations, because it is quite likely that some information is going to be captured into the sales order that needs to be brought to the attention of the transportation operations team. And you don't want to be using a telephone or email or post-it or some kind of oral communication method to be able to convey to the transportation team important information that they should be aware of when handling or planning a particular transport for a customer. It could also help you mitigate authorization issues, in that a way to work around this, previously you might have given at least display authorizations to the transportation team so they could at least view sales orders to see if there was any text that had been captured, or look at the text if they had been notified that there was something that had been captured into the sales order. But however, this then also means that you need to give access to the sales order to the transportation team, and this might then also potentially open the door to them having access to more information than they need to with regards to that particular customer or your sales activities. And then lastly, it's also going to provide for some process efficiencies, time-saving efficiencies. We've already mentioned that you do not need to have an email or paper trail of information that you want to pass on from sales to the transportation team. The ability to propagate those texts means that you are also guaranteed that the text, the information that you want to pass on, is going to get to the correct recipient into the freight order. And also, as I said, it presents a time efficiency in that you don't need to waste time trying to find somebody, call somebody, or look at a different object in SAP to find out if there is any information that you should be aware of from a transportation point of view that would have been captured in the sales order. To be able to leverage these two self-service configuration UIs and set them up, then you need to go to the Manage Your Solution or your configuration environment, and the two SSCUIs in question are indicated there. The first one, which is Maintain Text Schema, is to some extent independent of this whole propagation process, in that the Maintain Text Schema configuration point is going to allow you to create additional text types that you want to be able to maintain on the freight unit or on the freight order. And then you'll have also then the ability to associate those text types that you have created to a text schema, which will be specific to freight orders and freight units. The self-service configuration UI that really glues all of this together, so the ability to propagate text from sales to transportation, is the second SSCUI indicated there, which is called Assign SD text types to TM text types for sales order or purchase order. And this SSCUI is going to look as it's indicated here, and essentially is saying that we want to propagate from the sales document item, so from the sales order item level, the text type TX03 that would have been captured in the sales order item into the text type S004 into the freight unit or freight order, depending on the schema that applies where this would have been configured. Similarly, you can also propagate texts from a purchase order item into the freight order. So both order processes, sales and purchasing, provide this capability of propagating texts. So let's jump into the system and see how this looks there. So I've already gone into my system in the configuration environment, and the two SSCUIs in question, you will find them by filtering through the application area supply chain and sub-application area transportation management, and then in the transportation order management item SSCUI, where you will find 6 configuration points. Here we find the 2 configuration points that were referenced in the intro of this particular video. So let's have a look at the first one, which is maintain text schema. As usual, press the configuration button to go into it. And this SSCUI is presented in 2 different dialog structures. The first one allows you to define text types. So at this point, a text type is independent of any kind of object. All we would be saying here is we want to be able to track and add a particular text type to an object, but we do not know at this point what the object is going to be. And the text types that have been defined as part of the standard content, you will find them starting with the letter S and the number S1 through to 4, and these ones really relate to transportation activities. So as we'll see in the freight order, you are able to capture a carrier's note, a sender's instruction, an item's text, and shipping instructions. You could of course create additional new text types by selecting the new entries button indicated there. So once you've defined your text types, the next thing that you want to do is you want to associate that text type to a text schema. So for that, we'll go to the second dialog structure by simply double clicking on it. And also, as said in the presentation earlier on, there are a couple of text schemas that are delivered as part of the standard content and really are the ones that you need to use. So we have 2 schemas, one that applies to freight units, and we have one that applies to freight orders. But again, at this point, we are not making any kind of reference to sales orders. We're just saying that we have a text schema for freight units that will encapsulate or include a certain number of text types, and the same thing applies for freight orders. So let's pick the freight order text schema and double click on the text type to schema assignment dialog structure to see what is indicated there. So this is where we kind of now get into that association of text type to text schema. Again, to recap, we're saying that we have a text schema called SFO, so freight order schema, that has been assigned to my freight order types. And we are also here saying that when we are going to be maintaining a freight order that has this schema associated to it, we want the ability to maintain those text types in a freight order to capture information. We also have here the information pertaining to an access sequence, which essentially tells us at what level we are going to be able to capture that text type. And if we look at S03 and call up the access sequence S2 to find out what that is all about, it is telling us that we are going to copy sales order, purchase order item text to FU item text. Okay. The next SSCUI that we are going to be looking at, which is also in the same application and sub-application area as previously mentioned, is this one here, assign SDMM text types to TM text types for sales order, purchase order. Again, we click on configure to access it. And here we have what was previously presented in the presentation. So we are saying that for the sales document item level, we want to copy the text type TX03 that is in the sales order item into the TM text type S004. Let's quickly call up the search help to find out what that one is about, which is the shipping instructions. So we want to copy the text type TX03 from the sales order item into the text type shipping instructions S004 into the freight unit and freight order. So from a configuration point of view, we've covered everything that we needed to. So let's go ahead and create a sales order by maintaining a text and see how that is going to then propagate into our freight order. So I've already gone on to create the shell of my freight order, and what I want to do now is maintain a text for my sales document item. So I'll double click on the item number to go to the item details. I'll then go to the text tab, and then I am going to maintain one of these texts, the one that corresponds to TX03, which is the reference text that is then going to be copied into my freight order. Now obviously here you have a certain number of English descriptions of the various texts that are available to you, and you want to make sure that you are going to be leveraging the right one, because as I said, we have the text type TX03 that is going to be copied and no other one is going to be copied into my freight order. If at any point you are unsure as to which one is the text type TX03, what you can do is you can click on this log icon here, and this will then show you and access your text schema for your sales document item with all the various texts. And here you can see it tells you that the text type TX03, so the technical code, is the one that has the English description shipping instructions. So I now know which is the text that I need to maintain in my sales document item to propagate correctly into my freight order. Let's go back, and I'm going to go into my shipping instructions, and I'm going to simply say this is the ship instruction for FO propagation. Okay, so I've done my text, and I'm now going to save my sales order. So it tells me the order is 1103. So let's go ahead in the transportation cockpit and plan the freight unit that has been created for this particular sales order. Okay, so we are now in the transportation cockpit, and I have identified the freight unit that was created in reference to my sales order 1103. So I'm just going to quickly select it, pick a resource, and assign the selected item to generate a freight order. Here we are. I'm now going to save my freight order, and once that is done, I can go into it. And remembering that we are copying the item text from the sales order item into the freight order item text, I then go down to the items, select my freight order item, and if I go into the notes, I should find the text. Here we go. We have the text that we created in the sales order item that has been correctly propagated into my freight order item, and me now as a transportation professional have access to that information, which might contain specific things that the customer would have wanted me to do, or that the sales department has asked me to do as part of the planning of this particular freight order.